Hi, my name is Aya. You're watching Aya Reads, and I'm here to talk about all the books I read so far in the month of March. So, I had a pretty good reading month so far, especially as far as ratings are concerned, because I'm going to be talking about 7 books, 4 of which I gave 5 stars. So, that is a great start to the month. The first one is going to be a DNF though, and I started and DNF'd Hyperbole and a Half by Ali Brosh. So, I chose this for one of my reading prompts in my TBR jar. And this is a book that was published before 2018, so I figured let's just pick this one so that I can see if it's something for me. And I got about, let me see, I think I got about like 60 pages in, and this is just not for me. I don't really love reading about memoirs, about people that I don't really know and they didn't do anything particularly interesting. So this is just about her life and her dog, most especially. And also, I'm pretty sure she's going to talk about her depression and stuff. It's these doodles that she makes, and then she tells a story about it. This is just not for me. It's supposed to be funny. I think I laughed once, but it just, even though I could fly through it and I could probably finish it pretty easily, I think this would get no higher than a 3-star, maybe even a 2-star. So if that's the case, I could just like cut my losses and DNF it. I had one 3-star read, and it was Keep Her Safe by QB Tyler. So this I read for my vlog of reading diverse books published in 2023, or diverse romances published in 2023. And this book, you follow Shay, who's a famous actress, and her bodyguard Damien. I think Damien. So he's been her bodyguard for 5 years, and she made it pretty clear that she was interested in him from the beginning. And he turned her down 5 years ago, but then her parents, and he kind of wanted to leave her then because he did find her attractive too, but he didn't want to get feelings for his client. So he wanted to leave, but then her parents actually died and he felt like he needed to stay. And now it's 5 years later. She just broke up with her long-term boyfriend because he was cheating on her. And now feelings are finally bubbling over and they finally confess what they've been feeling all these years. I enjoyed the first half. I thought it was hot. I thought it was sexy. QB Tyler does know how to write chemistry between characters and smut scenes. And I did think that I was gonna love this because I do really love the bodyguard trope. She had 2 big books that were published in 2023, and I was debating between this one and the other one. And I ended up going for this one because of the bodyguard trope. The problem in this book was that they got together way too early, in my opinion. So at that point, the angst that was created was outside forces, but in the relationship, there was no more angst. There was no more will they, won't they? So that made the relationship not that interesting to me in the end. So either this book should have been shorter or they should have fought their feelings a little bit more. Also, there was this whole stalker plot. It was very clear to me who this stalker was, so that was also not a driving force for me to really get into it and really try to finish it. And like it turned, like this whole stalker plot at the end, it turned into him being like this cartoon villain. It was pretty unrealistic, and I know we're talking about like a celebrity and their bodyguard, but I mean that does happen in real life, and this whole, like I said, stalker plot line became way too unrealistic for me. I did enjoy her writing style. It was very easy to read this book, and like I said, she did, like the things she did right, she did really right in my opinion. So I'm very much looking forward to reading more by QB Tyler. I just think this one just wasn't the one for me. My 3.5-star read was This Could Be Us by Kennedy Ryan, and I am very sad that this was a 3.5 and didn't have a higher rating for me. This is the second book in her Skyland series, and this book you follow Soledad and Judah. Sol, she has been married to her husband for 20 years, but he betrays her in one of the worst ways. She finds out that he's been embezzling money from his company, and she finds out that he's been cheating on her. And the person who discovered the embezzlement is this coworker of his called Judah. Through circumstances, he asks her for help to incriminate her husband more and to try and find evidence. So because she's so angry and realizes that she's been married to this man that she doesn't know, she does end up helping. And then fast forward like 8 months, her husband is in jail, and she's trying to rebuild her life because she was a stay-at-home mom, and she doesn't want to give that part up. Like she still wants to be there for her daughters the way she was when her husband was working full-time. So she doesn't want to work full-time out of the house, but she doesn't want to sacrifice her daughter's happiness and most especially their way of life. She doesn't want to change that. One of her friends is a social media manager. Like she manages influencers. So she helps her and she becomes a social media influencer, giving people tips on how, like on cooking, cleaning, stuff like that. But her and Judah, they have chemistry and they do really like each other, but she wants to love herself because of the way that her husband betrayed her. She doesn't trust herself anymore because she feels like, I was married to this man for 20 years. How did I not realize what a piece of shit this man was? So she doesn't trust herself to know what kind of man is good enough for her. So she decides to self-date. Judah, in the meantime, does really express how much he is interested in her. And they eventually start this like friends with benefits situation, even though he really doesn't do that. The only thing he wants is a serious relationship, but he feels like if that's the only way he can have her, then that is fine too. Judah is a single dad with 2 autistic sons, so that was also a very interesting plot line in this book. The reason why this is a 3.5 and not a 5 or a 4 is because so this is my first full-length Kennedy Ryan, and I really thought that she was going to be a favorite author of mine, and she still has the potential to be one of my favorite authors because a lot of her books are very high up on my TBR, a lot of her romance books. So I have very high hopes for her romance books because this to me was not a romance. This was very much a woman's fiction with a big romance plot. But I really didn't believe in the romance because we didn't really get to see a whole lot of it, because a lot of this book revolved around Soul's life, Soul's journey. Even though we did get chapters from Judah's point of view, they were mostly revolved around her, and even the conversations they had were revolved around her and her life and her self-love journey. And when they did finally get together, it was mainly physical, so I never really got to see them truly fall in love. Like, to me, this was just, it felt very physical and not, like, I could see why he would love her and I could definitely see why she would love him, but we never really got to see the process of them falling in love, in my opinion. I did like both characters individually, but the fact that Judah didn't really want to be friends with benefits and she kind of forced him in a way made her a little bit like, I don't know, it didn't make her unlikable to me, but I did just like, it just made me feel so sorry for Judah because I did want the best for him and he was a good guy. So I didn't want to see that. I didn't want to see her struggling so much with trying to love herself. I wanted it, I preferred for her to have gone through this self-love journey and then for them to get together and not this in between. Although I guess that is the whole point of this story. I did really love her writing. She had beautiful, beautiful quotes. And when these two did get together, I did really like the sexual relationship was great to read about. I did enjoy reading that. But I do think that I'm gonna love a lot of other Kennedy Ryans more, so very much looking forward to reading more by her. And I did hear that this is her only like women's fiction, so all the other ones are romances, so very much looking forward to those. And now we get into the 5 stars, so that was quick. I had, like I said, I had 4 5 stars and I really loved all of them. But these are gonna be in order of my least favorite 5 stars to my favorite. Although, like I said, my least favorite is still an amazing book. But I'm gonna start with A Love Song for Ricky Wilde by Tina Williams. This is a speculative romance and it's also like a historical fiction in a way. You follow Ricky Wilde and she comes from this family that has this like whole business of funeral parlors. And she has 3 older sisters and they're very like a lot older than her. They're these socialites and they really have their life together, whereas she really doesn't have her life together. And she also doesn't want to go into the family business. So one day she meets this old lady and she lives in Harlem and I believe they live in Atlanta. Yes, they live in Atlanta. So the lady from Harlem, Ricky kind of tells her what she wants to do in life. She wants to open up her own flower shop. And this lady lives in Harlem and like the bottom part of her apartment building, she doesn't really do anything with it. So she offers to rent that space out for her. So she does. And then she goes and lives in Harlem. And while she's there and starting her own flower shop, she learns a lot more about the history of Harlem and everything about the 1920s in Harlem, like the jazz era in Harlem. And then she meets this mysterious stranger, and when she talks to him, he tells her that she needs to stay away from him and she needs to leave Harlem, and if she knows what's good for her, she'll stay away from him, but they keep getting drawn together by fate, it seems like. Also, we get snippets of this man living in the 1920s. He's a pianist and he's trying to make it in the Harlem jazz scene. And these two men may or may not be the same person. And this takes place around a leap year. It actually takes place in 2024's leap year. So I would say if you're going to read it, it would be a great time to read it this year. I really loved it. This book put 7 Years in June way up on my TBR. I think I'm gonna read it in June. I really loved her writing style. She had such beautiful lines in this book. And at first I was really on the fence with this book because I also thought with this book that maybe this is not a romance. Maybe this is also like a literary fiction with a romance element. And while especially the beginning does lean a little bit more towards that, I did really truly believe in that romance in the end. And I do think that it is a romance in the end. And I did think that this romance was very beautiful. If you really love books like The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue or The 7 Year Slip or even Divine Rivals, I think you're really gonna love this book because I did really like the mix of genres in here because it was a romance, it was also like a literary fiction a little bit, it was also a historical fiction a little bit. I really loved their romance together. I did think that they were true soulmates. I loved Ezra too. Like I loved reading about him and about his life and about his struggles. I do think the beginning could have been cut down a little bit because we did spend a good majority of her trying to figure out her life in Harlem and her in a relationship with another man. And she could have kept the same plot beats, but she could have gone through them a little bit faster. Like there were these whole conversations and scenes with her and Ali, the guy that she was with before Ezra. And that was just, at the end of the day, Ali was a vehicle to getting us to her truly interacting with Ezra. So we didn't really need to have all that in the beginning. I would have preferred the historical snippets then because I thought that those were fascinating and I did love that. But other than that, I thought it was a beautiful book. I would highly recommend it. It was a new release. It came out in February of 2024. I highly recommend it. It was such a beautiful, beautiful book. My next 5-star read was The Coldest Winter by Brittany Cherry. This book came out in 2023 and this is also a book I'm reading for my diverse romance vlog, romances that were published in 2023. This follows Starlet and Milo, and Starlet, on her birthday, she finds her boyfriend of like 3 years cheating on her. So she leaves and she's like this good girl. Like she is really like a nerd. She loves studying. She's in college, but she doesn't really go out at all. But now, because this happened, she goes to this frat party with her friend, and there she meets this guy who she describes him as like he's very hot, but he also has very, very sad eyes. They have this one night stand and he leaves after, and she wants to be a teacher, so she's this student teacher at this high school. On her first day in her English class, she sees the guy that she had this one night stand with. She sees him in the class and he's one of the students, so he's still in high school. So this is a like student teacher romance, even though she's still a student teacher. He's 19, she's 21, so the age gap is not that significant, but obviously it's a forbidden romance considering she's literally his teacher. Also, he's behind in school because his mom recently passed away. Like he just doesn't care anymore, so even though he's pretty smart, he just doesn't put any effort in. So his principal, who's also his uncle, assigns Starlet to be his tutor. They are constantly around each other, and she actually also lost her mom when she was 13, so they also connect through that. This was so beautiful. Like it made me, like, even though I have a hard time crying in books, this definitely made me misty-eyed. Like I felt so sorry for especially him. Like I just wanted to hug him. He was going through such a he had such a difficult life because his father completely checked out after his mom died. He became an alcoholic. He just kept drinking, wasn't there for him. I just felt so sorry for Milo. This is a great mental health representation as well because before his mom even died, he was struggling with depression sometimes, and his mom passing obviously exacerbated that. This is a difficult book. I wouldn't say this is for everybody, especially not if you're really still in the grips of grief, because I don't think this would be the healthiest book to read for you. And yeah, technically this is forbidden because technically it's student teacher, but to me this was so much more than that. Like this, I don't say like if you're looking for like a taboo forbidden romance, I don't think this, and you're looking like for a fun, angsty good time, I don't think this book would be for you. And even though that, yes, that is a plot line in this book, obviously, but it does definitely deal way more with like these two broken people finding comfort in each other and finding true love. I really, really love this book. I thought Milo, even though, yes, he was doing some immature things, I did think that he was a very mature character in the end. And I wanted to hug him. And there was also something else that happens about halfway through where Milo gets diagnosed with this disease that will slowly turn him blind. This also has visual impairment rep. So I really loved it. I would highly, highly recommend it. It's not that long. I definitely flew through it. It is about 320 pages. I would highly recommend it. I thought it was beautiful. And once again, Brittany Cherry does really know how to write, because some of the lines in here were beautiful. And once again, Brittany Cherry is an author that I've been sleeping on because it's my first book by her, but I have a lot of books by her that I really want to get to. So hopefully I can do that. My next 5 stars is If You Hate Me by Helena Hunting. So this is her first book in her new hockey series, another new release. And I really, really loved it. Like, I inhaled this book, even though it was over 400 pages. You follow Tristan and Beatrix, but she goes by B or Trix. B was living with these awful roommates and had this awful job. And on the same day, she quit her job and left her roommates. She has nowhere to go. So she asks her brother, who's a professional hockey player, if she can stay at his place. And he lives with his best friend, who's also a professional hockey player. They grew up together, but Tristan, who's the brother's best friend, he used to always tease her, he used to make fun of her, and he used to call her Beat, like as in beat it. So they haven't seen each other in a while, and now she's there living at his place, and he realizes that she's a woman now. So that kind of annoys him, because his mother left them when he was 12, and he always had to take care of his younger brothers, and he's just sick of taking care of people, and he thinks that if he gets feelings for her, she's another person that he needs to take care of. So they, even though they're living together, they're constantly bickering, they're constantly fighting. As the title suggests, this is a hate to love. At one point, even though, because they're very attracted to each other, they start hate fucking. And obviously it doesn't just stay that way. Feelings eventually develop. She really loves nutrition, so she loves cooking and loves cooking for people. So she is constantly cooking for them, cleaning their house. And she used to live in this bad neighborhood, so both Tristan and her brother went with her to get all her stuff, so they realized what kind of place she was living in. So anytime because while she's living with them, she's trying to look for apartments, and anytime she's trying to, she's circling an apartment or things like that particular apartment is a good place for her, either her brother or Tristan completely shoot her down and tell her, no, it's in a bad neighborhood, because they, and especially Tristan, they want her to stay with them. Like I said, I really love this. I really love the hate to love part in here. I loved their hate fucking in the beginning. I really like it in hate to love when the sex start happening, even though they still don't like each other. I don't know why. I just love reading about that. This proved to me once again that the roommate trope reigns supreme, because once again, this is a roommate to lovers trope, and I completely ate it up. I really enjoyed this heroine. This is my second Helena Hunting, and I also really loved her heroine in her first book. So I think Helena Hunting writes amazing heroines. Usually I am obviously more partial to the guy, because obviously I'm reading romances, and if a guy is swoony, then obviously I'm gonna love that. So normally I could give or take a heroine. I don't really need to love a heroine for me to love a romance, but this one I really loved. And I did enjoy this hero. I can definitely see that this hero wouldn't work for everybody, but I really liked him. I like this kind of emotional suppressed hero. I don't know why, I just liked him. He was a dick in the beginning, so once again, I can definitely see people not liking it, but I liked it. I mean, I like dark romance, so I don't mind if a guy is a giant douchebag in the beginning. The smut scenes were 10 out of 10, although they were a lot. The frequency was a lot. There are some criticisms that in this book she's writing to the TikTok crowd, and I can definitely see that, but I didn't mind it. I think there were 3 things that I'm gonna warn you about, so definitely take caution with this book, because there's 3 things that I think might not work for a lot of people. This book not only had a 3rd act breakup, it had a 4th act breakup, and I usually also don't like 3rd act breakups, but in this book I felt like it worked, because this guy, because of his emotional, the way that he suppressed his emotions, anytime he felt something for the heroine, he pushed her away immediately. And that is another reason why I think this hero might not work for people, or this book might not work for people. And it is pretty long. There's a lot of side characters that have similar names and also have nicknames that are similar, and that gets confusing. But to me, I took those things in stride. I ended up enjoying this book. I read more than 300 pages in one day because I was enjoying this book so much. So it definitely worked for me. But I would say, don't take this recommendation completely at heart, because I can definitely see why it wouldn't work for some people. But as I keep saying, it definitely worked for me. I did really love it. I am very excited to read the other books in the series. A couple were already set up. The next book is going to come out in July, and it's going to be a dad's best friend romance. And we already saw a hint of them. And I I'm very much looking forward to that. Yeah, Helena Hunting is slowly becoming one of my favorite authors because I read 2 books by her and I gave both of them 5 stars. So that is great. And last but most certainly not least is Bride by Ali Hazelwood. I'm sure a lot of people already read this book. If you haven't, I would highly, highly recommend it. This is a paranormal romance, Ali's first paranormal romance, and you follow Misery, who's a vampire, and Lo, who's a werewolf. And in this world, vampires, humans, and werewolves know about each other's existence, but the werewolves have been at odds with the humans and the vampires. And the vampires and the humans have this tentative truce going on, and the reason and the way the truce is upheld is by every 10 years they leave a vampire child in human territory and leave a human child in vampire territory, and Misery used to be one of those children. So she doesn't really fit in with the humans, and she also doesn't fit in with the vampires. And now her father wants to make an alliance with the werewolves, and he wants her to get married to the alpha of the werewolves. And at first she doesn't want to because she feels like she already did such a duty before. The consequence of that is that she never really fit in with the vampires. But she has a best friend, or like a sister to her, who's human, and she disappeared. And Misery has reason to believe that the werewolves, or especially Lo, knows what happened to her. So she agrees. So she becomes his bride, and she goes and lives with the werewolves. And there she slowly falls in love with the pack, with their alpha, and with his sister, who's like this cute, like the cutest little girl ever. She was one of the stars in this book. I really loved her. And of course, this deals with fated mates. There's nodding in here too. Like I ate the shit up. But I have to say, I really love paranormal romances. It's one of my favorite genre, and I really hope that this book, since obviously Ali Hazelwood is so popular, will spark another paranormal romance renaissance. They used to obviously be very big, like in the early 2010s. I really hope they make a comeback because I would be just the happiest girl in the world. I really love this book, and I really hope that this will become a series, and I think that it will because she already set up, especially Serena's book, so very excited about that. I really loved both the hero and the heroine, but most especially I really loved the heroine. I thought she was hilarious. I just found myself laughing out loud a lot while reading this book. I thought she was so great. I really loved her. And obviously I really loved Lo. I love the snippets we got of his perspective because obviously Ali writes single point of view, but in this book you had every chapter started with a snippet of his point of view, and I really love those. And I really loved him. Like, I thought he was such a great alpha and like a great werewolf hero. And there was this marking scene which that was so hot to me. This is actually Ali's smuttiest book so far because there were more than one sex scene in here, and I thought that she did a great job with it. I really love the world building in this book, and I really love in books when there is an explanation for why there is a paranormal element, and I like this explanation. I like that there was one, and I like the explanation too. Yeah, I really loved Anna. I loved a lot of characters in this book, and like I said, I really hope that this is going to be a series because I really want to read Serena's book and Owen's book. So hopefully, since obviously Ali doesn't write series, I really hope this is going to be her first series. Yeah, this is definitely my favorite book I read this month, and I'm very happy that I got around to it so fast. And those were all the books that I read so far this month. Definitely let me know in the comments below if you've read any of these books and what your thoughts were. Also, I would really want to know what your favorite book was that you read this month. And if you don't want to leave a comment, but do want to say that you were here, leave me a werewolf or a vampire emoji. And I really hope you enjoyed this video. Definitely let me know by leaving a like if you did. And thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.